Tigard City Council meeting to order. Already. City Recorder Krager, please call roll.
Councillor Shaw.
Here.
Council President Wolf.
Here.
Youth Councillor Manini.
Here.
Councillor Gudusi.
Present.
Councillor Hu.
Here.
Mayor Lube.
Here.
Councillor Robbins. Here. Councillor Schlack.
Here.
Thank you. If everyone will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, everyone. We will move on to public comment. If you would like to provide public comment by phone or video, please log in now or call to do so. The phone number is 503-966-4101. Anyone present wishing to comment should sign up at the sign-up sheet at the entrance of the room. We did not receive any written comments by noon on Monday. I have the sheet here. There's no one signed up to speak in person, but if anybody would like to, I see a bunch of city teammates and some guests, so I'm going to assume not. Mr. Vang, are there any phone callers in the queue or anyone wishing to comment by video today?
No callers, Mayor.
Okay, thank you so much. We did go through that pretty quickly, so if somebody happens to take a moment to log in, can you let me know?
Yes.
Thank you. We will move on to proclamations and recognition. Our first proclamation is for Pride Month for the month of June 2025. And we have Management Analyst Richardson here with us virtually for the item. Welcome, Alex.
Hi, Mayor. Hi, Council. I'm sorry I can't be on camera. I'm just recovering from a thing, but I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me. You'll see my face in person next week, actually on June 10th, when I'm here for the Juneteenth proclamation. So again, my name is Alex Richardson. I'm here to introduce the Pride Month proclamation. I just want to say a few words. I'm really excited about this proclamation, as I am every year on Pride Month, as I always work closely on all of the Pride events every year for the city. I want to thank the Mayor and Council for supporting LGBTQ plus rights and celebration as we head towards our annual Pride Parade and Festival in partnership with the Tigard 12th School District on Saturday, June 28th. Some of you may know our very own City Councilor Jake Schlack will be the Grand Marshal of the parade this year. Mayor Lube speaks at each Pride, and this morning, I believe, was just at the Pride flag raising outside of the Tigard Public Library, as well as I believe some of the council as well. So this really demonstrates your commitment to LGBTQ plus rights, and I'm so grateful for the support, while also being aware that many people in our community, particularly transgender people, are worried for their rights and safety. I just wanted to give a couple facts. The American Civil Liberties Union is currently tracking 588 pieces of anti-LGBTQ plus related legislation introduced or pending in current state sessions nationally, and of these, 8 are actually in Oregon specifically. While the Oregon bills are likely to fail, they do speak to enduring transphobia and homophobia in Oregon and throughout the nation. So it's more than symbolic to me that Tigard does stand up for its transgender and queer employees and community members, and it really means something to us in our community. And if you're listening from home or in the audience and want to help protect the rights of LGBTQ plus folks, you can look up the Human Rights Campaign, the ACLU. You can come to our Pride event, which we'd love to have you, and just speak up for queer and trans people to your friends and neighbors. And hope to see you June 28th, and that's all I got. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alex. We did have a pretty incredible event this morning for those who could be there for the flag raising. We don't have you here in person, so I'm sorry we can't take a picture with you, but we should absolutely take a picture with the entire council present. So let's go ahead and do that. It's my understanding that there's a caller, but we will go ahead and finish with proclamations and recognitions, and then we will go back to public comment. The next proclamation we have is National Gun Violence Awareness Day, and we have Paige Anderson and Debbie Lindgren from Be Smart for Kids to be here to accept the proclamation. Feel free to come on up to this area up here to turn the microphone on. There's a button in the front, and it will turn green.
I'm Paige, I'm handing over mine.
Excellent.
All right. Hello, Mayor Lube, Council President Wolf, and council members. My name is Alexa Hassman, and I recently moved from Tigard, though my in-laws still live here in your community. I'm here today as the state lead for Moms Demand Action, and I want to begin by saying thank you. I'm joined by fellow volunteers and my family. By inviting me to speak at your proclamation support for National Gun Violence Awareness Day on June 6th and Wear Orange Weekend, June 6th through 8th, we are standing together in solidarity. We honor the lives lost to gun violence and uplift the voices of survivors. This moment matters. If this proclamation helps even one person feel safer or more seen, it is worth it. Wear Orange began in 2015, created by the family of Hadea Pendleton, a 15-year-old girl who was shot and killed in Chicago in 2013. Since then, thousands have joined this movement. In 2025, we continue to wear orange to remember all those taken too soon and demand a future free from gun violence. Every year, nearly 48,000 people are killed by guns in the U.S., and another 85,000 are wounded. That's an average of 125 lives lost and over 200 people injured every single day. These aren't just statistics, they are families, friends, and futures forever changed. As a survivor, I speak to you not just from advocacy, but from lived experience. My brother Jesse was in the back of an Uber heading home when another car pulled up alongside him on the freeway and opened fire. The bullet tore through his body, damaging multiple organs. He required 3 people's worth of blood and spent weeks in a coma. He survived, but none of us were ever the same. The ripple effects of that moment continues in my family every day. Here in Oregon, we face especially sobering numbers. 77% of firearm deaths in our state are by suicide, far above the national average of 54%. If you take one thing from my words today, let it be this: gun violence is preventable. We do not have to live and die like this. Every one of us should be able to go to the grocery store, a place of worship, a movie theater, a college campus, a workplace, or a school without fearing for our lives. Please join me and thousands across the country in wearing orange this June to honor victims and survivors and to stand for a future free from gun violence.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Letza, and I'm sorry that your family experienced that gun violence. National Gun Violence Awareness Day is June 6th, 2025, and we would love to also take a picture with you.
Mayor, we do have a caller on the line.
I'd like to finish proclamations and recognition, and we have one more item to thank Youth Counselor Minany. We have a resolution before us talking about Shreya Mainini, who is next to me and has been our youth counselor for this past year. And I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you have done serving the city of Tigard. We have a couple of quotes in our resolution. Thank you, Youth Counselor Mainini, for bringing your perspectives to the many different agenda items that have come before City Council, as well as your incredible engagement with the TIAC and our community. Thank you, Shreya, for all of your thoughtful contributions as youth counselor. You are always prepared and bring meaningful questions to our council discussions. I wish you the very best as you pursue your education at Case Western. I have no doubt that you will soar. Congratulations. Shreya, you have been an absolute gift to the work with over the past 2 years, from a new Tigard Youth Advisory Council member in 2023 to VP of TIAC, and now a graduating senior and TIAC's council liaison as our youth counselor. You took the opportunities the city had and just ran with them. You're an incisive participant in meetings and conversations. You're a skilled team collaborator, and your humor and wit are always appreciated. You got to attend the National League of Cities conference twice and made the most of it, asking members of Congress thought-provoking questions and bringing enthusiasm and joy to our little Tigard trip contingent. Thank you for your service to Tigard, and best wishes to you as you continue on your bright path ahead. And the last quote is, thank you, Youth Counselor Mainini, for your thoughtful and insightful questions on agenda items before the City Council. Your breadth of knowledge on a variety of topics assisted both the youth in our community and the Tigard community at large. Tigard is better because of you. Thank you. If there's anyone else who'd like to make some comments or a motion on the resolution, please feel free. Yeah?
Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 25-18. Oh, wait, 25-17.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, will the city recorder read the name and number of the resolution?
Resolution number 25-17. A resolution thanking Shreya Mainini for her service as Tigard's youth counselor for 2024 through 2025.
Thank you. Will the city recorder conduct a roll call vote?
Counselor Shaw,
Yes.
Council President Wolf,
Yes.
Counselor Gudusi,
Yes.
Counselor Hu,
Yes.
Mayor Lube,
Yes.
Counselor Robbins,
Yes.
Counselor Slack.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. The motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council. And also, we have one last picture. We have some flowers for you, so we should also do one more picture.
Next week.
Thank you so much for this resolution. I am sorry.
No, you're fine. It's just helpful when it's not like in your face.
Thank you so much for this resolution. I am honored beyond words. And I am also really glad I was able to get this opportunity. I really do hope I use this as efficiently as I could. I know I've learned a lot from this, and I know I will be using some of this in the future. I don't know how yet, but I'm excited to use it.
Thank you so much. We will go back to public comment. We do have somebody on the phone. Mr. Vang, will you go ahead and let them in?
Hello.
Hi, welcome to Tigard City
my name-
Council. You have 2 minutes.
Mayor Lube, I will try my best. The website said 3, but I will talk quickly.
Okay.
My name is Karen Emerson, and I was a member of the Charter Review Committee. I've been following the discussions about adding council agenda items, and I have some concerns about Section 3.6 and the proposed ground rules tonight in the document in tonight's agenda. First, I'm unclear about the reason for the word "or" in this section. If the councilors are choosing between the first paragraph and the next 5 bulleted items, I hope the council will lean towards selecting the bulleted items. If the document is meant to be adopted as is, then I read conflicting procedures that will muddy the waters instead of clarifying the procedure. Second, while I appreciate that the bulleted items attempt to create a way for councilors to bring ideas into a business meeting, the language is not clear, and it still seems to allow the mayor and/or city manager to keep an idea from ever being included in an agenda. One of the topics that the Charter Review Committee discussed was the powers of the mayor, and during this discussion, the committee definitely did not want the mayor to have a veto authority. The Charter explicitly states this. If the mayor's authority over the meeting agendas can prevent an idea from being placed on an agenda, I feel that that is a form of veto and should not be allowed. The committee's original charter language stated that the mayor would approve the agenda because our discussions revolved around the mayor being the chairperson of the council, as, of course, someone does need to facilitate and run the meetings. I feel strongly that city councilors need a procedure to be able to add topics to meeting agendas. Bullet point number 3 uses the nebulous word "may," which could mean it may or may not actually happen, and the committee removed all instances of that verb from the charter. If this bullet item remains in the document, please change "may" to "will." And my last item of confusion is about bullet point number 4. It starts with "for other items," and I cannot tell what items are meant to be included and what items are meant to be excluded. Is this an attempt to address proclamations, potential ordinance topics, and city department reports differently? Also, the only requirement of this bullet item is a written response. The "may" in the middle and the "etc." at the end again leave it open for the written response to just say no. I feel that it is very important for councilors to have a clear procedure for bringing forward requests and ideas that they hear from Tigard citizens. I hope you will continue to clarify the language in this section of your ground rules before adopting them. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, too many pages. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the city manager report. And first, I'd like to start off by welcoming our new city manager, Brent Stockwell, to Tigard. Welcome
you.
to the end of day 2. We're happy to have you here, and welcome to your first report.
Well, thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be your new city manager. I am enjoying my first week, meeting with many people, doing a lot of listening and learning and exploring the community. Again, thank you for your trust and confidence in giving me the opportunity to serve you, the community, and the city employees and volunteers of Tigard. So now it's some news from Team Tigard. Tigard Public Library's summer reading adventure began Sunday, June 1st. So community members can stop by the library to pick up the reading logs, and everyone gets a free book for signing up. And this is thanks to the Ready to Read grant program that's administered by the State Library of Oregon and also the Friends of the Tigard Library. On other news, park shelter reservations are booming, which keeps our front counter team busy assisting them. So just a reminder that we have those park shelters out there to enjoy. June 7th is the Health and Fitness Summer Kickoff Fair from 3 to 5 p.m. at Universal Plaza, and this is a family-friendly event that's designed to promote a healthy and active lifestyle for children of all ages. And then also on June 7th, it's going to be a busy day, is our Youth Night Out event from 6 to 9 at Cook Family Park. And that event will include games and a visit to the Tigard Tualatin Aquatics District swimming pool. Finally, I've asked Chief McDonald to come up very briefly and give a quick update on a significant recent effort of the Tigard Police Department as part of my report. Thank you.
Welcome, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. For the record, Jamie McDonald, the police chief. Quickly, two things to hit. So last week, we did an organized retail theft mission, and the thing around that is that's part of the grant funds that the county, that the district attorney's office had gotten, and you may have seen some of the public service announcements that the DA and the sheriff have done, some of the commercials talking about supporting businesses and the thefts that they've been facing. So as a part of that, we've been strategically planning with the other agencies in the county to do missions to try and hold people accountable when they've been committing theft. And that's one of the areas that in my dashboard each month we've talked about has been such a thorn in our side is organized retail theft. And largely what we ran into this time were, I don't want to say the average run-of-the-mill shoplifters, but they were largely shoplifters, which is actually a pretty good sign from the seat that I sit in, because we would rather see those, and some of them were youth, juveniles, and those are the ones we can focus on correcting so that maybe we don't have repeat offenders. They did get some good information that I really can't go into, but they have some stuff they can follow up on in some bigger groups that we're aware of and that they can continue to work on. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is I sent a copy of a news release for our officer that pled guilty to criminal charges. One of the things I wanted to talk about is that I'd like to acknowledge that he did this well on duty and in the course of his official business. As soon as we were made aware of it, we went into action. And as a result of those decisions, he has had to have his day in court, literally, about what he did. He is no longer an employee of the city. And what I want to commit to you is that as your police chief, your police department is going to examine everything around this to make sure that we don't have a problem internally, and make sure that if we do identify something that is an ongoing issue, that it's going to be corrected. I do not feel that that's going to be the case, but we are in the process of reviewing our practices, and this specific case on its merit, but then also making sure that we are having the appropriate practices and procedures in place to make sure that this doesn't happen again in the future. And should you have any questions about this or anything else that we do in the police department, obviously, you're always welcome to reach out to me at any time and ask me any of those questions. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them tonight, but I just wanted to come out in a public forum and let all of you know that we are committed to making sure that this doesn't happen again in your police department.
Thank you, Chief. Does anyone have any questions for Chief McDonald regarding any of the items presented? Okay,
Thank you. So that ends my report, Mayor. Thanks.
thank you. And welcome. The ice has been broken. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of council ground rules. There is a resolution, and we have City Attorney Rahala here to discuss it.
Good evening, council. So ground rules are required by our charter, as our caller reminded us, and thank you again to Karen for her participation on the Charter Review Committee. I can assure council that every member of the Charter Review Committee is very familiar with every single word in our charter, so I appreciate her perspective. So according to charter, the ground rules have to include a code of conduct, process for the selection of board and committee members, and will govern proceedings of council where they do not conflict with law or the provisions of the charter. Everything else is really left to council's discretion. So you have 3 proposed amendments tonight. How we got to this place is council has had several discussions about it, and I have assembled a lot of information from the various council members. That compilation is before you tonight as a proposal for your additional discussion and action. The caller was absolutely correct. The "or" was meant as council must choose one or the other. So there were two fairly different text options. So I included both of them, and council has to choose one. So I am aware that there's other considerations around specifically board and committee assignments and non-agenda items. Those are the two that I've heard most from, and then those are the two that are the focus of the proposed amendments tonight. So really, this is your opportunity to have this discussion as all of council together, instead of me compiling individual comments and trying to reconcile them. So I will turn the conversation over to the mayor to facilitate the conversation. I'll be taking notes. If we have something ready to adopt tonight, great. If you need staff to prepare a revised version, we can bring that back at a future meeting. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I figured we should probably just go through, I think, each section and discuss if there's any questions or comments and go section by section. So we can start with the preamble. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or revisions regarding the preamble? Yeah, Councilor Schleck.
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank the council and staff for the 5 months of discussions that have brought us to tonight. I look forward to having this discussion. My only question is, what does the value of no surprises mean? Because I feel like the other values are fairly, like, I understand them sort of intuitively from this perspective, and no surprises sticks out to me as something that just feels, for lack of a better word, kind of silly to put in there.
Council President Wolf.
Yeah. Councilor Slack, thanks for the question, and I guess that's probably one that I feel core to my own values, and maybe no surprises will come back to the conversation where we talk about non-agenda items. In my opinion, no surprises is bringing something forward that hasn't been addressed before, that becomes an interest and is discussed without an opportunity to have seen it in a packet, to prepare thoughtfully, or bring up something that seems kind of out of the blue, if you will, that was unexpected. And that probably speaks to my time as chair, many years for the Tigard-Tualatin School Board, is just really trying to, what is it that we want to accomplish this evening? What is the agenda? Are the materials prepared? Have people had adequate time to be thoughtful in their discussion? And to have something that was unexpected come forward in a public discussions can sometimes, not that a dialogue can't bring things that were unexpected, right? But if it was an agenda item, that people were prepared to have that thoughtful deliberation and conversation. But to me, no surprises is just something that was completely unexpected, unplanned for, that was added, and that staff's not prepared for that either. So that was a lot of words outside of no surprises. So I guess I'll leave it to my fellow councilors. You clearly understand my point, and it really goes to my core as to what I believe is appropriate. But I am one of 7 voices. So,
Councilor Hu?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilor Schlack and Council President Wolf. I can see both sides. I can see, well, just as a lawyer, when you say no surprises without definition, and there's consequences for violating council rules, that worries me. But at the same time, I can see Council President's point of, especially with non-agenda items. So I would, if there are no other contexts in which no surprises apply, then I would recommend we remove no surprises from the preamble and put that specifically in the section 6 and put that in terms of how no surprises is to us in terms of introducing non-agenda items. So that's why I would propose that we remove no surprises from preamble and just put that in what that means specifically in each section that follows.
Thank you, everyone. I think no surprises is important to include in the preamble because I think that no surprises probably doesn't only apply to Section 6, but I can understand for additional clarity or context on what no surprises may mean. But I think it's, essentially the preamble is kind of our values, and that feels like a value of working with each other collaboratively, which also a courtesy of no surprises with each other and with the city team on a variety of different issues, not just non-agenda stuff, is something that it was a long time ago, but I believe we talked about that, I think, in depth regarding it. Does anyone have any suggestions for a verbiage, Councillor Shaw?
I wasn't necessarily thinking of a suggestion to replace that, because to me, assuming best intentions assumes we are not going to be surprising each other. And life is full of surprises, so something can come up tonight that we wouldn't have accounted for, but we'd have to discuss tonight. There are some circumstances of those. We have that, every one of us has that in our life. So it seems to me I would be fine removing it, understanding that assume best intentions knows that we are not going to be surprising each other with issues. But that's, that's what I think.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just, I think making assumptions is exactly what this document is trying to prevent us from doing. And so if we want it to be an expectation, I think it needs to be in here. Councillor Schlack?
Thank you, Mayor. Sort of hearing what the intentions are, I feel like the phrase due process or trusting the process is better than no surprises, because really what it sounds like is we're going through the proper channels to raise concerns and to make sure things are properly vetted rather than just springing things on people. And I feel like if we were to change that language to one of the options I suggested or an alternative, that would get to the point better than just sort of a no surprises. That phrase, I don't know, it just doesn't sit well with me.
Mayor, it's fine. I think my intent has been clear. If there's a challenge with the wording, and Councillor Shaw, I appreciate your comments, but I think there's something different that bringing forward something unexpected versus an emergency that has to be addressed. That they're different, because you're right. Life brings things that are unexpected. Unexpected to me is different than surprises, but we are like at the first 2 inches of this document, and I want to be really thoughtful that we keep moving forward to clearly the additional 4 pages that were left on our desk. So I am fine. I think I've made my point clear, and to Councillor Hu's point, if it's about process around the agenda, but I think it just speaks to the spirit of how you function. So if you all feel like the other areas cover it, I don't want to, beat the poor dog already in the first phrase. So,
So the only thing I will say is this has been many, many months of discussions, and I don't want to just push this through now, just to push it through. However long it takes is however long it takes. And so I just want to establish that now. And so, Councillor Robbins, did I see your hand? Okay.
Yes, you did. Thank you, Mayor. This document we've had various versions of this that we've worked through with working groups for a few months now, since January 11th. No surprises was on it at the very beginning. We didn't vote on anything, we didn't decide anything, but it was something that was in the initial draft. I like the plain language, because this is our kind of our, what did you say, our theory, our
values?
Our values, sorry. It's been a long day. Our values, and if we want, we could say it to, we do not intentionally surprise each other. Something like that, if we want to put more details in it. I appreciate Councillor Slack having some different ideas. I think due process gets a little foggy in my mind about what that means and what the community thinks it means. we're hearing that on the national stage right now. But more, I think it goes more to our intent with each other is to not surprise each other, not to come out and say, and now I want to talk about blah, 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 that no one's heard anything about, no one's strived to try to get it on the agenda at any other time, anything like that. So if we want to change the wording some, I'm fine with that. But this, I thought we all kind of had contributions to this section from the beginning, and so I'm okay with it. But.
Councillor Schlack?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. This was definitely on the draft that was originally scheduled to be discussed on April 8th. This was not on the draft, I don't believe, from January when we had our initial discussions. So, I mean, that's not meant to be sort of a gotcha thing. I just want to clarify where this entered the process.
Okay, I could be remembering wrong. I thought I remembered at that meeting people throwing up different ideas and that was on there. But if you have a different memory, I'm sorry. So.
I guess let me ask the question about the suggestion of we don't intentionally surprise each other. Are people okay with that? Councillor Hu?
Thank you, Mayor. Another consideration is serial meeting law. I'm just concerned that if we say no surprises, that means at every council meeting we already know how each of us is going to vote on something. And that's my concern, because there are a couple times where I was surprised by some council members' vote on something, and that's by design, a public meeting law. So I'm still not comfortable with just no surprises without any context being provided. So that's my concern, that people will assume we already know how we're going to vote. So,
Council President Wolf?
So for me, we shouldn't know how everybody is going to vote, but it has been presented on an agenda that's been posted for a week with supporting documents. That is completely different than bringing something forward that no one has seen, no one's had any idea that it was coming forward, no opportunity to prepare and be ready to have a thoughtful discussion. Those are apples and oranges in my world. Thank you.
So I would prefer we define what no surprises mean.
Tell.
I appreciate this discussion, but I think it also goes beyond just what happens here, just thinking about events that we're at and something that somebody could do, or just in general, I think the overall spirit of the value is working together collaboratively, and I think we are incredibly dedicated to making sure that we don't do public meetings and, comments here, like nobody is aware of them and those sorts of things. And I don't want to kind of go so far to that of saying no surprises means we talk about everything, because we absolutely do not. But I just want to say, I think it's really important because of this conversation that this somehow in some form gets in here. And I think we need to figure out focus on getting to the language that we can agree with. Councillor Schlatt?
If the intention is to say that we value collaboratively working together, why don't we replace it with working together collaboratively or collaboration or something that sort of gets to that point? I would support replacing no surprises with collaboration or some form of verbiage to that effect.
I know that came out of my mouth, but I don't know that they're the same thing. But Councillor President Wolf.
Oh, yeah, it's all good. Oddly enough, I think that almost speaks more to what Councillor Hu is concerned about, is if we're working on collaboration, then how many people have had a conversation before something comes forward? So I am surprised that this is part of it. I feel like it's just plain language, and I understand that maybe many of you feel the language isn't crisp. I almost feel like let's just call it straight up on a vote. I mean, or we're going to be painfully here for a very long time. And I don't know how we do this, right, as we modify, thumbs up, thumbs down on a section and move forward. But I don't want to spend another half an hour debating 2 words.
Counselor Gadusi?
Thank you, Mayor. I think that the intent is there with the being respectful and civility and trusting, assuming best intentions, I think was the phrase. But I could go either way. I have no strong feelings one way or another. But if we were to cut it, I think the intent is we want to be respectful of one another. We are all trying to do what's best for the city, and we're not going to try to surprise people. Sometimes it may happen, and that ends up being sort of what it sounds like the concerns of a lot of my colleagues out there.
How about just, I guess, thumbs up, thumbs down on the suggestion of we don't intentionally surprise each other, because I think that's more descriptive language than no surprises. 1, 2. Counselor Gadusi, I don't, thumbs up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that is, 4 is the majority. And so changing, City Attorney Rahala changing no surprises to we don't intentionally surprise each other gets the majority. Section 2, Code of Conduct.
I know we just settled that topic, but I feel like that phrasing fits better with the Code of Conduct than it does in the preamble. That's my only comment. Otherwise, I like the Code of Conduct.
Counselor who?
Yeah, I'm fine with removing no surprises and move the we don't intend to surprise each other in code of conduct, I think.
Council President Wolf? Can you turn your mic on?
That's fine.
Everyone else? Okay. Counselor Gadusi? Is probably searching for the button.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep, that's exactly what I was doing.
Okay.
So Mayor, just for clarity, can we, so we can just know what was proposed?
So in the preamble, humility will be the last line,
Great.
and then we will add, we don't intentionally surprise each other to the code of conduct.
Great, thank you.
Following, Shelby? All good? Okay. For communications and the role of counselors, are there any changes to responses to the public? Okay. Seeing none, social media? Communications with the organization? Yeah, Counselor Schlack?
I'm broadly supportive of the 3 bullet points as they are. I believe they're nearly copy and paste from previous ones. I'm just wondering if we should expand it from just the city manager to include all public officers, the city attorney and the municipal judge as well, because I feel like they fall into a gray area of administration where they're not under the city manager's organization, but also they're not, obviously they're not part of the policy-making body.
Can you be more specific as far as where you're, like, what you're specifically talking about, which bullet point, or just, am I the only one confused? Okay.
Yeah, yes, I meant generally for this section. I'm happy to propose specific language. I mean,
Can you propose
if we say
specific-
administration, then parenthetical, it says city manager function, we could list them out as city manager, city attorney, and municipal judge functions. And then on the first bullet point, and then the second bullet point respects the professional duties of the city manager, city attorney, municipal judge, and city teammates.
Counselor Shaw?
I had some similar thoughts, so I would support that suggestion of Counselor Slack's.
Counselor Wolf? Okay. Counselor Gadusi, any concerns?
No, that's fine.
Okay. City Attorney, any questions? All right. Representing the city 24/7. Okay. Boards and committees. I know there are, I think, a couple of proposals as well as the original language. Yeah, Councilor Robbins?
The top page that you have is my proposal, and that is not to replace the entire section, but just to replace the first part of the first sentence of the first bullet point. Because that's kind of a long bullet point. Or maybe it's it's to replace the second bullet point. Correct, the second bullet point.
Yes, and I think that's actually what we discussed in general. That's not what ended up being in here, but yes, that's what's discussed. That was discussed, so that should be in there. But I guess between the first two pages, that's probably the conversation. Councilor Shaw?
Yeah, and mine was the second, not replacing the full section of 5. So it's not addressing the council liaison assignments. So it's just addressing the first, second, third bullets, and partly because, one, I think this is going to be a public document. To me, it's poorly written, it's repetitive, and it isn't the spirit of collaboration. And so we've had many discussions about this. I do think it would be vital and valuable to have a counselor, and if one counselor can attend, 2 counselors, it could be 1 or 2, attend to provide a collaborative voice on potential board or committee assignments. Having it no voice and just sitting and listening to me is not collaborative, and also I think it sets the wrong precedent for future councils. So similar to Council President Wolf, this is one area that I'm very passionate about given my past work, and the language here was my attempt to streamline it, make it less repetitive, and make it more collaborative.
Councilor Slack?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councilors Shaw and Robbins for proposing those 2 amendments. I think if I were to choose, I think both of them achieve the same goals, roughly, aside from the number of council members that may attend. So my preference personally would be to use Councilor Shaw's amendment to replace the first 3 bullet points, leaving the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th bullet points relating to liaison roles and so on as they currently are. That would be my preference.
And I just want to add, a lot of these were given to us today, and so if you hear a lot of shuffling of papers, it's because counselors are reading and trying to understand and process some of the different changes recommended, proposed. Council President who? No. You just, oh my goodness, that is, whew. Counselor who?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm fine either way, but I just don't like the word shall. So if we can just get rid of the shall and find something equivalent, I will appreciate that.
Where is the shall? Just because there's...
All of them.
Mayor, I'm happy to remove my shall from my amendments.
So I see the first one, if I may, first bullet point of the proposed amendment from Councilor Shaw. The mayor and no more than 2 councilors shall interview. Shall we just state will interview? Where's the next one? There's a may.
And the mayor shall.
Oh yeah, then the mayor shall interview. Yeah, so we're just replacing both of those with will in the first bullet point, and then I'm not seeing any others.
No, I thought I'd caught those, but I didn't. I had Counselor Who in my mind. So I have failed with those two shells.
I appreciate the discussion, and I know there's a lot of passion around this. So I think for boards and committees, there's two kind of issues right now, and talking about the city boards and committees. We had kind of a lot of conversations around it and ended up at a place with Councilor Robbins' recommendation when we walked out of the meeting. And it's my preference that that's the way that it continues to be. Just the way that we have changed the interview process to make it easier for our community members, and efficient and those sorts of things, and understanding. I mean, it is also in the charter, under the mayor's responsibilities, that it appoints, they appoint members of city boards and commissions, yes, per the council ground rules, but I think the ultimate authority ends with the mayor. It's one of the powers that the mayor has. And having an individual, there to be in on the interviews is something where we landed on. And so it's my preference that we go with the original agreement that we walked out, which includes Councilor Robbins' suggestion. Yeah, Councilor Schlack?
I'm sorry to be pedantic this evening, but the charter, correct me if I'm wrong, City Attorney Rahala, says that the mayor makes recommendations in accordance with ground rules, not appointments. The council appoints these boards and committees, otherwise it would just bypass us entirely. I mean, I enjoy the photo shoot, but we do have a role in this process.
Yeah, absolutely. The charter says right here, section 3.3D, appoints members in city boards and committees is provided by council rules.
And Mayor, and that's why I'm suggesting, that's why I think it's very important as provided by council rules. And I think we heard earlier by one of our community members who was on the charter committee that this was not meant to be authoritarian. It was not meant to be a veto. It was meant to be collaborative as a charter. And as you stated, it's the mayor appoints members of city boards and committees as provided by the following council rules, which is why I believe these council rules are vital to include.
Yeah, no, totally understand. I think the ultimate recommendation does come from the mayor, which I think is the intent, and happy to have people sit in on the interviews, but I also want to ensure that future mayors have the authority that's invested in them from the charter that says they make the recommendation to the council. My concern is, and we had discussions over this, and I believe Councilor Schlack was the one who even said, I acknowledge that it's the mayor's choice to make those recommendations. And so, having people there is fine and it's great, but my concern is losing sight of that and having it potentially turn into a discussion or those sorts of things. It's a murky area, and I understand the council perspective, absolutely, from being a counselor, but I also understand the mayor perspective of wanting to do the duties that the community has asked the mayor to do.
And this does not change that goal. As it says in the second bullet, the mayor will provide the council with a list of selected applicants, along with their applications, the interview notes, and the recommendation, summarizing why the applicant was chosen. So it certainly doesn't take your recommendation or your power away. It just allows there to be other voices in the room to be more collaborative. And if we're assuming that this document is meant to be respectful, seek and understand, we're assuming best intentions, I think having additional voices in the room isn't a negative.
Any additional counselors? Council President Wolf?
So I just want to make sure I'm clear on the actions, right? So if I'm understanding the first one, and then incorporating Councilor Robbins, is that counselors self-select, they get to participate. Now we're suggesting one or two. If there aren't ones that want to participate, the mayor continues moving forward. The second bullet still gives the mayor the recommendation. I believe that you could accomplish, we already get the applicants along with their applications. I think a summary of the decision is fine. I don't think all interview notes or every detail, especially if you participated.
That's included in. So I copied that verbatim from the original text. So I'm happy to remove that.
Because I was thinking what we've seen in the past in the packet is the applications and then the recommendations going forward. So if we have been lacking the why, I think that speaks to the core of it. But I think it still speaks to the mayor making that recommendation. And then the 2 weeks is fine for me. I just want to make sure it's practical. I feel like Nicole is usually pretty efficient in getting that to us when she has that information available. So I don't know if 2 weeks is the right number or as soon as recommendations are complete to bring that forward. But I just want to give staff the window they need to get that information out and not be a hard stop on it has to be 2 weeks. So,
Per the discussion I think that we had in the very beginning of the year, we started including some of the notes that we take on the questions, and doing it 2 weeks in advance, because we were the discussion was if somebody wanted to talk to someone, they wanted more time to be able to do that. So we have built in making sure that we can deliver that within 2 weeks of when it comes forward.
Yeah.
So we've been providing the applications and the interview notes.
So what have we gained here? I mean, is the question of whether the person is actively interviewing? Councilor Shaw, I'm just trying to understand.
No, it's allowing no more than 2 counselors. So it could be 1 or 2 counselors can self-nominate to attend. And again, it's to provide an opportunity for counselors to meet applicants and to assist in the collaborative choice, potentially, of a candidate or to help ask questions. But again, in the second bullet, it says the mayor will provide the counsel. So it is ultimately the mayor's decision and at their pleasure of selecting the candidate, and then of course it goes to council to approve. So the only thing we're gaining here is having 1 or 2 counselors who self-nominate to be able to attend the interviews.
Which is what Councilor Robbins put in the revision.
Well, except it's different because it says the council will not actively participate aside from brief introductions. And I have not included that.
Okay.
Because I do not understand why we'd have a counselor sitting in a room when we have community members. It would not be able to either ask a question or encourage a continued dialogue. So that to me makes no sense.
I appreciate the question. This is something that, we did talk about is, I think people are in, I wish Nicole or Corinne was here. I can't remember if people are in 15 minutes or half an hour slots. 15. Okay, so individuals are in 15-minute slots because the last time there was, I think, 45 or 50 people who we had to get through and apply. And I've stated this since day one. There's 4 questions I have. Why do you want to do this? What do you like about Tigard? What would you change about Tigard? And what are your questions for us? And the concern is if there's a lot of individuals in the room, when we add more voices, which is not it's not a bad thing, but it continues to prolong the amount of time that the discussion is taking. And when we have 50 people to interview, it's a long time. It's a huge commitment. It's an important commitment. But the discussion we had previously was when their questions were, we can bounce together in there. But it wasn't going to be a round robin, half an hour, 45-minute interview with each person. That was the reason and council agreed, which is why it was in here, that counselors would, say hello and be observant and perhaps participate at the end if there were additional questions.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to get into the mechanics because the 15 minutes is arbitrary because sometimes there's 50 applicants, sometimes 2. But I think if you had 4 questions, maybe even opening up one of those questions to a counselor who's attending would certainly, again, be more collaborative. And I think for a community member to see that not only the mayor is there, but a counselor, that again is looking more collaborative. It's looking as if we have intent of interest in that individual to potentially be on a board or a committee. So I don't necessarily know if we need to go into the details of the actual process, but perhaps if you would be willing to open up a question. So one of your 4 could either be to a counselor, and if no counselor shows and they get to be all your 4 questions, that works too.
Council President Wolf?
So I'm fine with if there's 4 designated questions that a counselor asks one. What gave me pause is that if counselors, depending on what counselor is there, picks different questions, we're doing different scenarios for different potential candidates, and I don't think that's okay. I think we really try to be consistent across all those that are applying, but if it's, here's the structured questions, if a counselor asks a question, I think that's fine. But I don't think we should vary based on a particular department or a particular counselor who's sitting in, so.
Councilor Schott?
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 thoughts. One is, I don't think these ground rules are not dictating the format by which these interviews are held. They're dictating whether the council should be involved as part of the interview process and how many members could be involved. Of course, we have public meeting rules. I think that's really the decision the council needs to take, and obviously I've said where my preference is. As far as logistics go, I'm just recalling, in this room we had 8 hours, I think 41 different grant applicants that came through with their applications. We had 10 minutes each, 5 people up there, 5 minutes for them to make their little pitch, and then 5 minutes for the panel to ask any questions. And we got through like clockwork. I'm looking at our deputy city recorder who is then assisting with that process. So I think it is possible if we wanted to open it up, but I don't think that is the decision we should be taking right now. The decision is, do we want the council to be involved as part of the interview process? I say yes, but I am out of 7 on this council.
Councilor Gaddusi? Any comments?
I mean, to be honest, there will be only a few that I would be interested in participating in, so I wouldn't be, a heavy voice in it overall. I think having 1 or 2 would be reasonable, and allowing them to speak if wanting to, as opposed to be an inactive participant, would be most appropriate.
Any additional? What, Councilor Robbins?
Thank you. May I call the question? Can we?
So I believe the proposal, if we need to be clear about what the proposal is again, I would propose Councilor Shaw's amendment, which is the 2nd page of our packet. The 2 amendments being that the word shall in 2 instances will be replaced with the word will.
Okay. And to be clear, that's replacing the first 3 bullet points because we still need to talk about the council liaison assignment separately.
Yes, I do have one process question though, because we are saying in this the mayor appoints members and then we list all of it, but then of course we end up appointing people by resolution with a full vote of the council. Does that need to be explicitly stated in order to clarify that, or is that just sort of a given with how things work? And that's just me sort of thinking future proofing it.
Yeah, no, that's a good question for the city attorney.
Yeah, I'd suggest clarifying by resolution. The purpose of adding the as provided by the ground rules in the charter is really to give council the discretion as to what the process looks like. So I would say absolutely council should clarify in this document what desired process it wants to see.
I'd like to propose adding a fourth bullet point then that says the council will approve appointments to city boards and committees by resolution.
Okay. I think that's appropriate. Any questions, comments, changes? No. Okay. Everybody good with all of those changes? Counselor who?
I don't know if it's need to be made explicit that the mayor is still taking the lead in the interview, right? So the mayor still assign which question. I don't know if that's implied or given, or should we make it explicit?
I don't think anything should be implied at this point. I think it needs to be explicit that the mayor facilitates, directs, or something.
Okay, yeah.
I don't have the words, but I think added clarity. So I appreciate the question, Councilor Hu.
Okay, yeah. So I have no problem, provided that the mayor still takes the lead and tell which question which councilor can ask. So yeah.
So
Do you have a verbiage recommendation of?
No. So maybe the city attorney can come up with some language.
I guess let me back up and ask the question. Since we're making so many changes, do we want to make these changes and have this come back, or is the goal to have this pass tonight?
My preference would be that we come back next week or when appropriate. Well, we can't do 2 weeks from now because of the budget, but we come back within this month and with the final version and approve it then, just like we did with council goals.
Okay. I think probably the meeting at the end of the month is the one that has space. So I think with that, are you comfortable adding in that verbiage, the top verbiage?
Yeah, the introduction to that paragraph does still say the mayor appoints members of city boards and committees as provided by the following rules. So that does clarify that it is still the mayor's appointment as provided by these things, but I can add additional language if that would be.
Yeah, I think Councilor Hu was specifically talking about the interview process, the mayor directing the interview process, which is different than the final recommendation. Okay. Excellent. So the next item in that section is regarding the council liaison roles. I think there was also some questions that were had. There weren't some recommended verbiage, but there were questions around 1 year versus 2 year and all of those sorts of things. So just a lack of clarity. And I will tell you, I'm also very concerned over what it may look like to try to figure out the puzzle of some of them being 1 year and some of them being 2 year and what that means. If that's the way it lands, that's the way it lands. But I think it has the potential to be a logistical nightmare if some are 1 year and some are 2 year. Councilor Schlack?
Thank you, Mayor. That was my suggestion originally, just because I wanted to try to be clear about how long appointments are for. My rationale for city boards or internal boards and committees, as is phrased here, is I feel like those are definitely the ones that council members sort of cherish the most. And I thought a 1 year term would allow for greater rotation. So that was my proposal there. And the reason I suggested 2 years for external boards is because oftentimes some of them involve two people, so that way we could rotate someone on, rotate someone off potentially. Additionally, I know like for the Willamette River Water Coalition, there's a rotation of officers where, for instance, I'm the vice chair currently, and then next fiscal year, the Tigard member would be the chair. So that 2 years would allow for accounting for some of those things potentially. So that way someone could serve both of those years. But happy to adjust as needed.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilor Schlack. And yes, that was my question, and I was just seeking clarity. I appreciate the examples, but there's several boards, so I just wanted clarity. Is it all external committees? Because there's several that aren't listed. So if it's just 1 year internal to all external, then I don't know that I have a particular argument one way or the other. I will say, for example, Councilor Shaw is sitting on CDBG, and I feel like you just start to get the swing of all the HUD grants, understanding all the things, and then you roll off. So there's value in getting your feet wet, getting deep, and then feeling like you can really contribute in a second year. I won't speak to all committees being that way, but I do think there's some value in being on longer than 1 year.
I will only, my only addition is, I think, our terms are 4-year terms, and I think you have an opportunity every 2 years to switch. And I know previously alternates did not attend meetings unless the primary was out, and there's a lot more alternates attending meetings, which I think means that 2 counselors are experiencing those. And I think just for ease, for me, my recommendation would be that everything is 2 years. So there's just, but if the council decides otherwise, that's fine. I think 2 years. I also think of internal committees like the audit committee that maybe meets twice a year. And then you're in 2 meetings and then, you're not participating anymore. Or perhaps the planning commission that may meet a bunch and then not for a really long time. The 2 years just gives the consistency to build relationships with community members and the city team to do that, because not everybody meets every month. A lot of them are varied. Is Councilor Robbins?
Except for the library board, because everyone wants to be on that one. So, and I think that one also meets more frequently, but
monthly.
But so maybe we could say something if we wanted to pick out those that maybe do have more frequent meetings or something that we all think we want to participate on. Have that one be 1 year, but most of the other ones be 2 years, and you could just pull out those aberrations, those ones that we want to keep separate, or we could include something about if counselors want to trade assignments, we could facilitate something like that. And so maybe I want to trade with Counselor Schlack on something, and we arrange that would be okay, and that would provide that additional experience.
Yeah, I think the trading suggestion is a great one. I don't want us to overcomplicate this process so much, which it feels like we're starting to do. So I think maybe my recommendation is 2 years for everybody with the opportunity of counselors, because we had counselors who switched, and I think that's totally fine. Yeah, Counselor Shaw?
I like the proposal, because originally, if you have 4 years, you'd like to experience as much as possible as a city councilor, because it's a learning opportunity. And you mentioned the library board, and transportation also is one that is very keen amongst counselors. And I'd hate because there's 7 of us now, that would leave only 2 individuals, 2 years each, to experience those committees. So I propose we just stay with it as the liaison for 1 year and the external for 2 years. And it does give us the last bullet, gives us the option that council liaisons may be appointed consecutive terms. So if someone decides that I don't think this will happen, but if the library board or the transportation committee is no longer that popular, then the person can stay on. But I don't think that this has been a problem, so I think it's fine as written.
Yeah, Council President Wolf.
Yeah, I think it's fine in the rules, and then I guess I would just request, as the committees are written up and we're making those selections, that it's very clear by each one, which is 1, which is 2. Should be statement of the office, but that way it's obvious. So, but that doesn't need to be in here. So anyway, but just to have that as a reference as we pick committees. And it's going to get funky, right? Because it all sounds great now, but now you've got 2-year assignments, 1-year assignments, and then you're trying to rotate, and it may not match correctly. But anyway, figure that out in January. So.
Any other recommended changes to any of the verbiage or questions about it?
So is the proposal to keep the existing language as it is, or was there, I'm sorry, I got lost in that conversation.
Okay. Keep as is. Okay. So item number 6, City Council agenda item request procedures. So there's 2 options on the sheet, and then there is 1 additional option regarding from Counselor Hu. I know there was some call-in notes. I just want to say a couple of things regarding those notes and conversations that we had. I don't think at any point there is an intent to squash anything being brought forward. I think the recommendation has been to ensure that things are being brought forward in a thoughtful way. Some items can be, and I'm going to lean on, I think, new City Manager Stockwell on even the brief conversation we had yesterday around this. There are some items that can just, once they're brought up, they can be taken care of without perhaps needing to come to council. There's some things that may need staff research and like a white paper to come forward. There's a varying degree of different ways to address items without them automatically coming to council first. And I think we were trying to be thoughtful about no surprises to the city council, no surprises to the city staff, and making sure that we have all the information needed to be able to come forward. And so the bullet point around the city manager may send notification out to the entire city council asking if there's 3 people interested was more directed, and if we need to be more specified, absolutely happy to do so. But it's, I think, referencing those situations that there are times that things can just be addressed, or understanding, because we hear it in the community, it's about other requests that maybe hadn't heard before and wanted to see if there's additional requests before it goes forward. Not sending every single thing to everybody every time was the intent. And then for other items, it was, I think, something that Council President Wolf brought up in the discussion, which is kind of what it was around of what was the intent of non-agenda items and how should that be used versus bringing items to be added to the agenda through the process that was discussed. Just that clarification, because Council President Wolf brought that up. Did you want to address that?
Mayor, that's correct. I appreciate Karen Emerson's comments, and I will defer to City Manager Stockwell on if an item is brought forward. I certainly advocated and agreed that any counselor should have that opportunity. And I believe on the school board, it wasn't an individual. On a 5-member board, 2 board members had to bring an item forward to kind of create that. Is there some interest to bring an item forward? So I think that's where the 3, so the city manager will send notification, but I also want to create that flexibility. Can it be resolved a different way? And how does that navigate? But certainly core to that is the idea that if there is an item that needs to be brought forward on an agenda, it's given that option, it's completed through a process. And to what the mayor said, that was my point. I still believe, again, probably from my own experience as chair, that non-agenda is housekeeping emergency issues that are brought forward for staff. It's an opportunity to move the business of the city forward that was unexpected at the time of the agenda, but not necessarily something that the council feels like, I want to bring this forward now and I want to talk about it now. To be honest, that was my thinking. So I was trying to create an opportunity for both, but thank you.
Councilor Hu, you have the additional proposal.
Yeah, I think is there what I wrote is what we are talking about pretty much just, in my opinion, of course, it's a more clear way of defining what councilors' responsibilities are. And my view is that we are all elected representatives of the city of people of Tiger. So we should be able to present items that we deem important because Tiger will trust our judgment. But again, at the same time, I also believe that we need to do it in a thoughtful way. So what I propose is, usually if this is something that you have not discussed with city manager or his designee, you should not bring this forward as a non-agenda item, right? But there are also ways to do so if you think it's immediate, you require immediate attention. Again, the thought of that we are all duly elected representatives of the City of Tiger, so we should be able to do that because that's what Tiger voters expect us to do. Also, in my proposal, I make this non-agenda item very narrow, right? First of all, each item can only be discussed for no more than 5 minutes unless the majority of the councilor voted otherwise to give you more time to talk about it. And second of all, we're only limited to three, what we can do with this non-agenda item. One is direct staff to gather more information or prepare a report. 2, schedule further discussion. Or the last one is the majority of us could just choose not to take any further action. So my intent with my proposal is not to discuss that item at that meeting. It's to give us an opening to discuss this topics in a future meeting, or not to, if we choose not to take further actions. So obviously I'm biased. I drafted this, but in my opinion, this is a more clear way to go about our non-agenda item business. So thank you.
Councillor Gadusi, I saw you raise your hand and then put it back down. I just wanted to check.
Yep, I just couldn't hear Councillor Hu, the microphone.
Okay. Councillor Shaw?
I support Counselor Hu's new agenda or his amendment because I think it's more clear than the two that were provided. I think we all had questions such as Karen Emerson who'd called in. And so I'd recommend that we replace the City Council agenda item request procedures with what Counselor Hu included. I'm a little concerned about the approval of at least 3 council members. I would prefer it to be 2, but I would like to see this move forward.
Councillor Schleck?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Hu for preparing this amendment and his remarks on it. I support his amendment. I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Shaw that I would prefer it to be 2 council members, but also we have an expanded council now. Before it was 2 out of 5, so 3 out of 7 is not a point I'm going to argue too hard, although I will state publicly my preference would be 2. Motion and a second sort of logic there. I would propose one amendment at the end, though, that and I don't know how to phrase this properly, but that every agenda should have time designated for non-agenda items, because currently we have not had any for last several meetings. So while we could have this procedure, if there is not guaranteed time in order for non-agenda items to be brought forward at that meeting, then it's sort of a moot point. So I would like to add that as a bullet point where appropriate in that list.
Thank you, Councillor Schlack. It was taken off because we haven't agreed how to use it yet. Happy to put it back on. Councillor Robbins?
Thank you. I've been listening to everyone's comments, and I appreciate all of the thoughtful comments that we've had and all the ideas. I agree that the first bullet, with just the long description under our proposed rules, should not be used. So hopefully we can get a thumbs up that we're not going to use that. I would like to work on this a little bit to use the majority perhaps of Councillor Hu's amendment, but with some clarifications, and also to broaden this to not just introducing non-agenda items, because having this be about non-agenda items doesn't address how we get items on the agenda, right? This is about, I'm here and we're in the middle of a meeting and I want to bring up a new topic. And I do think we need to have some procedure and rules around how we get something on the agenda. If I come as a counselor and I want something on the agenda, who do I talk to? I talk to the mayor and the city manager, and I say, this is what I think we should discuss. And as Karen Emerson said, and I don't think that's happening here, but we want to make sure that there is a way to get that on without any sort of veto, whether it's from the mayor, the city attorney, the city manager saying, no, that shouldn't go on the agenda. So we want to have a process. And I think there, having the, as supported by 2 or 3 counselors, so I was talking to Council President Wolf, and I really think it would be a good idea if we could discuss XYZ that's not a serial meeting, but it's me showing that I have thought about it carefully and I've asked someone else's opinion and it should be on the agenda. We need to have a time frame for when that needs to be submitted and for what meeting that's submitted for. For instance, in this, the proposed on the screen or in our packet, it says, should a member of council wish to bring forward an item for council consideration, the councilor will submit the request to the mayor and city manager in writing, preferably by email, by Monday at noon. And I question, is that really me putting in something at noon on Monday for a Tuesday night meeting? Or is that for the next meeting? And so I want that to be a little more clear, because that's not clear. And I certainly don't think that 24 hours is enough time to allow staff to be prepared to discuss something. So I would just like to combine these two a little bit and work a little bit more on it.
Thank you. I guess you bring up a really good clarifying question of perhaps, Counselor Hu, is your intent with non-agenda items the way to put items on a future agenda? Or is it just...
No, I think the way I wrote this is it's the intention that councilor who is interested in having something brought on an agenda item for discussion first discuss with you, the mayor, and the city manager first. And if that's going nowhere, that's never happened before, so hopefully that will never happen, because my experience so far is that everybody's being reasonable. But if that's not happening, then this is the last resort for any city council member to do it. Or, as Councilor Shaw mentioned, life is unpredictable, right? Sometimes emergency came up. So my answer is that no, this is a vehicle for both, for both.
Council President Wolf?
So I think as I look at this, Councilor Hu changed the title of number 6. So I think that's also because number 6 was City Council Agenda Item Request Procedure, and then the proposed immediately went to non-agenda. And I think they are very different. I 100% support a process to get items that we care about on an agenda. I guess I'm just looking for a structure to do that before leveraging the tool of a non-agenda. And so when I read the title, I just found that confusing. I think we should first have the right to bring an idea forward to the city manager, to the mayor, and work through that it's put on an agenda, staff can adequately prepare for it, and then bring it forward. If that isn't working, then I understand the fallback to a non-agenda. So that's why I just wanted to give clarity, because I feel like that has changed the purpose of number 6. So I want to give clarity to what the steps are.
My intention is that we do not have to have something in writing for request future item on agenda, because as I said, I think we can talk with the mayor and the city manager and let that process work privately. But if you want to...
Yeah, I think it's actually really important for it to be in writing. And so I just want to clarify, by Monday at noon, the intent is always, because the city manager and I meet every Monday at noon. And so that gives us an immediate opportunity. And respecting that, I appreciate your question, but I think depending upon the topic, right, there's a bunch of different things. If there's an immediate thing, it absolutely could be added to the next day's agenda. If it's something that, takes a little bit more time or has more flexibility, then it could be added to a future agenda. But the Monday at noon was simply because we immediately have a meeting at that time, and that gives us an immediate opportunity to be able to have that as one of our ongoing agenda topics of, hey, what is this? Where can we put it? What's going on with it? That was the intent behind the timeline. And writing protects, having it in writing with an email, like a timestamp, protects everybody. It protects the person who's sending it. We have documentation, all of that. So for me, that's my preference. Does that help clarify? Yeah, Councilor Robbins?
I think that we all have the same goal here, and I think if we could set this aside and decide a couple of things now, like, do we want it to be 2 counselors or 3 counselors for putting something on the agenda? Do we want it to be you hear back within 5 days or 48 hours or 2 weeks? Whatever it is, then I would be willing to work with City Attorney Rihala. I have a pretty good idea of what we should do and draft something using the parameters that we decide on here to put all this together with a simple process to put something on the agenda, including putting something, and you can have a meeting and discuss something in person, but then I highly recommend afterwards saying, per the meeting we just had, I would like to have blah, blah, blah on the agenda. And then, it's ideal if you have 2 or 3 people who want to do it. And if that is the case, perhaps we say, if you have at least 2 other people who say, yes, they want to do it, then it's going to go on the agenda, right? But if it's only you and I have some cockamamie idea, maybe then we need to ask, does anyone else want to talk about it? Or maybe it's something that could be handled in another way. Would you allow me to draft some steps that we could consider at the meeting at the end of the month?
Do you have, Councillor Slack, do you have something on her question?
No, I was a slightly different item on Section 6, so
Okay.
I'm happy to defer to Councillor Hu.
Councillor Hu?
My concern with that approach is that if you find one counselor who doesn't want to go in with it, you ask another one, you get that one, you ask all other 6 of them, that will be serial meeting. So I have concern about, let's have a meeting and see if you want to do it, you want to do it. So that's my concern.
So that's why we wrote in there, the city manager may send notification out to the entire council, because as, a city employee, he can do that and say, these are the items that, have been brought up. Please let me know which ones you are interested in discussing. That way it is a neutral party who can do that tallying for us so we don't create a serial meeting. Councillor Shaw?
Yeah, so just breaking down for clarity in my mind, seems like we have 2 items. One is how to request agenda items be placed, and the second is how to request non-agenda items to be placed. So with those 2 clarity in mind, I think that's helpful. Thank you, both Councillor Hu and Councillor Robbins. Probably not going to be settled tonight, but I would support moving forward with those 2 different items.
Can I ask sort of a clarifying question of, I absolutely understand, and it should be written in for if a counselor doesn't feel as though they're getting, the response that they want to bring it forward under non-agenda to be able to have that discussion. Can I ask what other items would be brought up under non-agenda that would not be items that you would want to add to the agenda? I'm sure it exists. I can't think of it, because it sounds like Councillor Hu's non-agenda item recommendation is based on ensuring there is a vehicle to get items on the agenda. And so I think being able to do it that way, to say, here's the process for getting items on the agenda. If you feel that this has been exhausted and it doesn't work, here is your remedy. Like we have, if we get to administering the council rules and feel there's a response there, I think that's totally fine. I just, given, my names today are challenging for me. Council President Wolf's comment around the intent of non-agenda items in general, I'm trying to clarify between the 2 of non-agenda items as a solution for adding items to the agenda and non-agenda items in general.
If we had a crystal ball, I think we could probably answer that, but we don't. So it gives us a mechanism in case it doesn't fit between a mayor and city manager that it should be an agenda item. It gives the council a way to have a non-agenda item. I can't come up with a specific reason, but there's no reason not to have it. And just to mention, and I appreciate Council President Wolf, your experience on the school board. This isn't, so I just want to make sure that it's a different.
That wasn't my response that I was going to give. My comment was, if we go through a process that says, and so if the ultimate goal is every individual should have an opportunity to bring whatever they want to an agenda, then that's really the route that we're talking. Because I think the argument is that if 1 or 2 fine, 2. But if you can't get to 2, the fallback is a non-agenda item. So if you're frustrated that your interest wasn't shared by council, then you bring it as a non-agenda. And I guess I'm just thinking of the process of so that city manager or city attorney can walk through, okay, to the mayor's point, what is the staff time? When can we adequately prepare the data that is being requested or the content to be addressed? Maybe staff has no role to prepare, for that discussion of staff, other than to have an agenda sheet that goes in a packet. But so that's what I'm just trying to understand. So is back to the question of absolutely having a process to get on an agenda, but if an individual is dissatisfied or unsatisfied, then maybe that's how they do it. I don't know. I don't have examples. So.
Councillor Schlack.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have no issue with councilors bringing ideas to council, making their elevator pitch about why that we should care about it, and then sort of taking a vote on whether there are enough councilors who would like to have staff look into it or that we need to schedule it for a future item. I mean, democracy is messy. We can only make this a bureaucracy so much. So I have no issue with people making their elevator pitch, having 5 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever we decide to make their pitch to the council. And then the council can decide, do we want to consider this further at this time? Yes or no? Okay, what's the direction? Okay, staff come back, give us an assessment, and then come back at a future meeting when you're fully prepared. I don't have an issue with that personally, and I really don't. I think that's sort of the crux of democracy.
I wanted to give new city manager Stockwell, throwing your feet into the fire. Do you have any recommendations based on your experiences of and what you've heard today on kind of our different ideas of processes to bring forward?
Mayor, councilors, thanks for the opportunity to talk about this subject. I want to give some advice to you, and I'm going to put that in a couple ways, and then I think I do have a recommendation. One of the concerns I have about items coming up from the floor the night of a meeting or items being brought up with just 24 hours or a limited amount of time is that there's a concern about notice. And in the Oregon Public Meetings Law, there are requirements there to make sure that the public is aware of and has a chance to attend and listen to the deliberations about a subject. So when things are coming up and no one has an idea that something's going to be on an agenda, or they get just the bare minimum 24 hours notice, it's not really kind of erring on the side of openness and transparency and giving the public the opportunity to contact you as their representatives about. So that's one thing to think about. Another thing that I have seen in this is both the tyranny of the majority keeping a member of the minority from being able to say something, and the tyranny of the minority forcing the majority to spend time on something that the majority has no interest in spending time on. So in good kind of democracy, we need to figure out a way to kind of balance both of those issues. I will also say that there is also not only an issue of notice, there's also an issue of timing. I know there is concern because these meetings are starting after many people are having a full day of work about how to kind of manage those. And I know that in the 2 days that I've been here, that your staff team works very hard to manage those so that we're not taking on too many items in one night. So one of the answers or one of the responses might be, yes, we will put that into the schedule, but can we have some time to schedule it on a meeting that has sufficient notice? Or is this one that really needs to come up at a business meeting, or is it one that needs to come up at the working session where we have more time to talk through with that? I am a big fan of a look ahead at the end of an agenda to say, here's what's coming on the next meeting, or and then that gives an opportunity to say, I think, Mayor, you asked, what's a reason for a non-agendized item? I think another reason is when you're having the discussions during the evening, it gives you an aha moment that, oh, that raises another issue that hasn't been really agendized for discussion that night, so you shouldn't discuss that, but you do want to discuss it and set time aside in a future meeting. So I think that's another reason why you want to do it. And doing kind of a look ahead at the next agenda and a counselor or the mayor's ability to say, hey, I think we should add this item to agenda, and you can see if that gets a motion and has majority support. I think that can be a good practice to add, because then that's taking care of the notice. It helps the city attorney or the city manager or the city recorder to weigh in and say, hey, this is an issue of timing, just a reminder of how many items we have that night. And I think that might be able to get to where you're getting, because I think I understand the issues that you're raising through this, but I think that might be kind of a more simple solution to do that. And honestly, I'd like some time to talk to the city attorney and the team about that a little bit more and figure out a way, and the mayor, you and I should talk about that a little bit more, because the charter has clearly given you the authority to manage the agendas for the meetings, and then figure that out and come back with some changes. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the ground rules. I don't have any real problems with the ground rules. That I know you have several options here under this one. But those are some thoughts I have about how we could help you and kind of meet the intent of the public meetings law. Thank you.
Thank you. Given that, is the city council comfortable with the discussion that we've had so far to allow the new city manager to kind of make recommendations on what this could look like going forward? Councilor Shaw?
Yeah, thank you very much, City Manager. We do have the look ahead, so if you haven't seen that, it gives you the next few months, so we know what's coming. So that has been something I think we, as a council, we've had, which has been very helpful, and you probably have seen it if not. So we know what the look ahead is, so appreciate that. I still, from my perspective, would like to see a breakout between agenda items and non-agenda items. So if you could come forward with that as one of the recommendations among others you may have, that would be helpful from my perspective.
Councilor Stack?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I agree with Councilor Shaw. And then there's one topic that I've just been sort of thinking about as part of the agenda item process, because we spent a lot of time talking about how we get things to an agenda for a discussion. And I'm going to go down a stroll down memory lane for a moment. So on March 18th, I brought forward a non-agenda item to propose that the HR director come back to council with a policy for how we handle annual merit increases for public officers, which was supported by a majority of the council. Council President Wolf, Councilor Shaw, and Councilor Hu. And the proposal was just for staff to come up with a recommendation. The recommendation came to Mayor Lube and myself on May 17th. I looked at it, I thought this addresses the prompt that was given, let's have a full discussion, and the mayor said that she had some questions that she wanted answered before it was brought to the full council. So I guess my question is, does the mayor have the prerogative to block staff recommendations from coming to council if they do not meet her interests or questions? I feel like that should be part of a full council discussion, regardless of what the staff recommendation is. If the mayor has questions or concerns, let them be aired publicly, so that way we can have a full discussion as a part of a council. I don't think that either the original proposal or Councilor Hu's amendment really address that final step of how does that staff recommendation get back? Is that the call of the city manager, or is that the call of the mayor, or how does that work? I don't know, but it's a concern that I currently have.
No, thank you, Councilor Schlack. I'm happy to just sort of have a brief discussion here on the item and the recommendation. My concern about the recommendation that Director Gomez brought forward is that council completely designates its authority on setting salaries to the HR director without any additional input, and it was a concern of mine to sort of give away that authority when it's our responsibility. So I had some questions that I asked her about, because we had done a subcommittee, which is how the council was still involved, and those sorts of things, and trying to figure out that legal perspective. I had no intent of not bringing it forward, but I wanted to sort of understand what that looked like, because it was a general concern for me for the council to give away its authority in that way. And so I wanted to have that conversation with Director Gomez and ask for the legal opinion before it came back.
So respectfully, I'm going to set aside the proposal of the subcommittee based on my 2 experiences with the last 2 subcommittees that were formed. That's totally fair if those are your concerns. Put it on the agenda so everyone has the policy. You and I are the only 2 council members who have seen this policy. The rest of our colleagues have not. There's proper notice for you to submit those questions beforehand or alternative proposals. They can then be included in the agenda packet like every other agenda item, and then it can be brought here. I just think it is a precedent that could be set that just totally undermines what this council is trying to do right here in terms of being an open and democratic forum for elected representatives.
That's certainly not my intent, and I apologize that you feel that way. Councillor Hu?
Thank you, Mayor. And just going back on our city manager's point of the charter. Just going back, keep turning off. Just going back to our city manager's point on the charter is clear on the mayor's role in the agenda item. I think the city managers and the city attorney sent us a memo saying that it's not clear. And the Charter Review Committee member said that it's not the intent. So if I could do it again, I would go back and say the charter should say it's the city council's role to determine what the agenda item should be, because this is a city council meeting. It's not, so just want to point that out to you. Thank you.
So it sounds like, Mayor, if I may wrap it up. So we have an example of where it could be key to have agenda items and non-agenda items. And we agree that sometimes the charter isn't as clear as we would hope, despite the recent amendment. So looking for clarity is going to be helpful for all of us.
Looking forward to what you bring back. The next item is administering the council ground rules. Any Councilor Robbins?
I do have a quick question before we move on. The last bullet point of Councilor Hu's amendment did discuss that a council meeting may only be adjourned with a majority vote of council members present. And we haven't been doing that recently because I believe there was a project to kind of streamline things, and you had discussed with the city, I don't know exactly who did, so I don't want to say the wrong thing, but it was determined that wasn't necessary, so I just want to know which way we're going to go.
Yeah, no, thank you about that. So after we had the Oregon Government Ethics Commission training, I was talking with the city attorney and city recorder about the way to have our recorded meetings as our minutes rather than specific minutes. And the topic came up that all of our votes needed to be like individual votes, and ending the agenda and having it as individual votes. The city attorney made the recommendation based on the conversation that she had if the agenda is concluded, we can just legally declare the meeting ended, which is what we've been doing, so we can move to having the recorded meeting as ending the meeting. I will say in my 6.5 years, I don't know that anyone has objected to ending an agenda, but if there are concerns and we want to go back to voting, that's fine. Councilor Schlack?
Thank you, Mayor. And sorry, my microphone's off. Off meeting. Weird noise. I've been on both sides. I hate writing meeting minutes. They are my least favorite thing I've ever had to do in my career. But I think, and so I'm totally sympathetic towards moving to just having recordings. However, considering that we moved to that at the same time that non-agenda items were removed and that we were having all of these discussions, it felt like there was no way to bring business to the floor, and it felt like that that since we didn't have any ability to vote on adjournment and determine if the council had no further business to discuss, it felt like that was the last safety valve that there could be in order for the council to say, no, there is still business that needs to be discussed. That said, if we come up with a non-agenda item process and a scheduling agenda item process that is sufficient to ensure that different perspectives of the city council can be heard, then I'm totally fine with proceeding with moving without adjourning without a majority vote. But that was the intent of bringing it forward. It was that concern of it being the last safety valve that the council had to say, no, there's still business to be discussed, rather than just having the mayor adjourn.
Any further discussion on it? Okay. We will, too many pages. Administering the council ground rules. Any recommended changes?
I support the intent behind this section.
Okay. Counselor Hu, are you okay? Having some technical?
Yeah, my screen shuts down, but it's fine.
Yeah, you got to move your mouse every now and then. I think we got more energy efficient and the monitors shut off quicker than they used to. At least it's not like 2 minutes now. Okay. So the city attorney will continue to work on this with the city manager, and I believe the last meeting of June has time, if I'm remembering correctly.
We'll look at the calendar and we'll be back with a revised document.
All right. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a briefing on 72nd Avenue pre-design project. And we have Principal Engineer Furman and Principal Transportation Planner Gerke to introduce the item. Welcome.
All right. So thank you for having us. My name's Tiffany Gerke. I am the Principal Transportation Planner for the City of Tigard, and I am up here today with Courtney Furman, our Principal Engineer, and with Nick Polensky with Kittleston and Associates, who is working with the Tigard team on the 72nd pre-design project, which we will be discussing today. Some of you are familiar with this project, but for those of you that are not, be prepared to hear all about it now. All right, so next slide, please. Perhaps. Okay, so today we'll be talking about the overview and the goals, the various public involvement, both in this project as well as the planning process that happened in 2019 and 2020. And then we'll be going into the design elements and next steps. Next slide, please. So this project is really looking at the design of 72nd Ave from 99W Pacific Highway to 217. Next slide, please. And really, it's breaking those up into smaller sections too, where we're getting a little bit more advanced with the northern section so that we can bring that to construction first. And then the section from Dartmouth to 217, that will only go to the 10% design phase, and then we'll be advancing that at a later date. But we'll go to the next slide, please. So as you can see, the phases that we've gone through currently, we've already done the 72nd Avenue corridor study, and that was done in 2019 and 2020, where we developed the basic concept and what the community wanted from that. And then now we're really working on the design of the project, and then we'll be bringing that, like I said, in future phase to construction. Next slide. So the planning phase identified what the community wanted to see. They wanted to see a separated bike facility. They wanted to see, of course, safe walking and biking, and they wanted on-street parking, but specifically physically separated bike facility, not just buffered bike lanes. And then within the public involvement in that, there were various stakeholder interviews, open houses, and online surveys. Next slide, please. And then within the current project, we've also had abundant public involvement. We had quite a bit in the fall where we did targeted outreach. We went to various locations along the corridor at peak times. Even McDonald's, Maria Latina, the Viewfinder Apartments, and the Overland. And then most recently, we had a neighborhood meeting at the TVFNR location off of Dartmouth, and we had a great turnout, a lot of very, very vocal participants in that. The room was packed, and we were very, very happy to see so much engagement from our community. Next slide. And I will hand it off to Principal Engineer Furman.
Okay, so as Tiffany said, the planning phase of the project was able to incorporate the recommended design into our city code. And so that is what we carried forward into our design. So that's what you'll see there on the map. And we have a very consistent cross-section. The only change that we have is at the very north end where we have the creek that crosses under the street. We do have a little bit narrower of a cross-section where we don't have the turn lane in the center, just to be mindful of the creek crossing. But for the rest of the section, we have the separated bike facility, which is curb separated. So you have a protected space separate from vehicle conflicts. And we have separated the sidewalk, a landscape strip, on-street parking on both sides. We did hear that there's a lot of demand for parking in the area, and then with the development that is happening out there, and then one travel lane in each direction. We can go on to the next slide. So what we just looked at is really the standard design for the whole section of 72nd. But we also looked at some specific design elements at intersections. We know that intersections are conflict areas because we have so many different people either using different modes, walking, biking in vehicles, trying to make different movements, and this can create conflicts. So we have a lot of different design elements at the intersections that we're planning for to improve safety and efficiency out there. So one of them that we'll look at in a minute is a protected intersection, which is a newer design, and that has a lot of safety benefits as well. We have a lot of new pedestrian crossings that are being added. We have future transit service, curb extensions, which shortens the distance that somebody has to walk, which improves safety. Green bike lane extensions, which I think maybe people have seen out on Hall, some of the green bike markings, and then high visibility crosswalks and lighting. And we can go to the next slide. So this should look familiar if you've been out at 72nd and Dartmouth at all. This is what the intersection looks like today. And if you can go to the next slide. This is our proposal, including the improvements of what this would look like when we're done. And this is a protected intersection. So you can see that all of the users have their own space that is completely separated. They even have their own crossing areas that are protected as part of the signal as well. And this incorporates all the different elements that I just went over. We can go to the next slide. So this is one of the other intersections that we have some improvements proposed at Beveland. And this is what it looks like today. And if you can go to the next slide, we can look at the proposed improvements. So this is our proposal at this location, and I'll talk about it in a minute, but you can see the proposed transit bus stops on both sides there as well, which is included in this design. And then you can see the sidewalk and the cycle track and the landscaped area as well. Can go to the next slide. So Tiffany and I have been working really closely with TriMet on future transit service out at 72nd and then continuing on to Dartmouth. And you can see there on the map, the little orange rectangles are the proposed stop locations based on the most recent conversations we're having with TriMet, still subject to change as they move further along in the process. And the image there is what the stop would look like at Beveland. And this is incorporating, if you go to the next slide, this is incorporating new FX service. So it's not just a normal bus service, but this is frequent express service. And it includes, this is what the buses would look like, and you may have seen these in other locations in Portland. And some of the things that are a little bit unique about this is the bus stops, the landings look a little bit different. You can see this is what they look like. There's a lot more space required, and they do prefer an in-lane bus stop rather than having a pull-out. So that's something we've been talking about with them. The idea being that the stops are a lot faster than a typical bus service because they have multiple doors that open, and it is flush with the elevation, so you're not waiting for a drop, something to get opened up and then drop down. And same thing with the, I believe the buses are able to, or sorry, not the buses, the bikes are able to be brought on and off a lot more quickly than normal bus service. So the whole idea is that the stops are very short, and so they want to be able to be in the lane, stop very quickly, and get back on their way. So this is what that would look like. And our design has incorporated the elements that TriMet has proposed for FX service. And this is part of the coordination with TriMet is that they're not able to add FX service somewhere where the bus stops wouldn't support that type of service. And so we're working really closely with them to make sure that this is a location that would support that kind of service in the future. We can go to the next slide, which I believe is Nick's. Yep, there you go.
Awesome. Thanks, Courtney. Can you guys hear me okay? Great. So another big piece of the design consideration that came about with the previous planning study was the need for protected and enhanced crossings across 72nd. So it's one thing to add corridor-wide these nice linear facilities to go up and down the whole corridor, but if you can't get across, that's a big issue. So this map highlights a lot of the different types of crossings that exist today and then will exist in the future with this project. So there are 3 existing four if you include Highway 99. It's not shown on this figure, but at the north and the south ends with 99 and then with 217 there are existing traffic signals that facilitate a high level of protected crossing for pedestrians. And then there are also signals at Beveland and Dartmouth that do the same thing. Those would all remain with the project. But then as part of the project, there are 2 likely new traffic signal locations. One at Elmhurst, which would be a signal depending on certain circumstances, one being if Southwest Corridor were to come through in tandem with that, that would be the likely trigger for a traffic signal there. We've kind of included an interim solution as well that would, if that's not present, then we would have a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which is just kind of the yellow flasher at that location. And then there is a proposed future traffic signal at the future Atlanta Street connection, which is dependent on some pretty heavy development up at that north section. It lines up, you can't see it on the figure, but it kind of would be right near the existing intersection for the old movie theater entrance. So we're planning for multiple things with this project, that being one of them. And then there are also 2 new mid-block crossings with rectangular rapid flashing beacons. One is in between Clinton Street and Baylor Street, which is kind of at the existing Winco location. And that's a heavy use area right now, especially with the viewfinder in the 72nd and the Overland. I mean, the Overland being at the Dartmouth intersection. But it was really prevalent with the public outreach that we did for this project, knowing that there are a lot of folks that need to get across safely at that location. So that the Baylor and Clinton location specifically was something that we know that there is a huge need, and there needs to be a safe way for people to get across a pretty heavy volume roadway. And then the other new proposed RRFB is at the Red Rock Creek location, just south of 99W. That's kind of at that big dip as you kind of get to the north end of the corridor. And that is in tandem, and we'll look at a few different pictures in a second. But there are a lot of improvements obviously happening at the Red Rock Creek location with some other projects as well. So just kind of working with all of that to create a really safe environment for people to cross the road right there. Next slide, please. So this is the existing kind of between Baylor and Clinton location that I was just discussing. So Winco is just on the left. You can kind of see at the foreground of this picture the stairs that would take you down to Winco. And then this is the 72nd apartment right here on the right-hand side of the screen, and then the viewfinder just in the further back. And if you go to the next slide, it'll show the proposed RRFB location. And the perspectives changed a little bit as we worked through some of the design iterations here, but this is now mid-block, almost right in the middle between Baylor and Clinton. So the apartment building that you see in the back is actually the viewfinder apartment. So the stairs for the Winco are actually not on this image. It's kind of further back towards me if you're looking from my perspective. But this then gives a really safe, high visible way for pedestrians and bicyclists to cross 72nd and cross the 3 lanes of traffic that are there with curb extensions like what Courtney had mentioned earlier, to make sure that they are crossing as little of distance of vehicular travelway as possible, and really gets them in a spot where they are just very, very highly visible. Next slide, please. And then this is the existing Red Rock Creek. It doesn't look like much of a creek right now today. Currently, the creek is propagated through 2 18-inch culverts that are need for replacement with this project. And that would be what has been designed and what we've gone through as part of the process, as well as a few different structure alternatives to carry the new creek cross-section. And maybe you all are aware, but there's another Red Rock Creek enhancement project that should be starting construction here in a little bit, that will really enhance what this stream looks like, especially right here. Most of that project does happen west of 72nd, but we, with our design, are propagating that same design through here. So the new stream cross-section, we are also planning for the need for a new path that would be along Red Rock Creek, which then also necessitates an enhanced crossing at this location. So if you could go to the next slide. This is what the proposed design is. So currently, the proposed Red Rock Creek project has the trail on the north side of Red Rock Creek, so you can kind of see the little brown sign on the left-hand side of the screen. That would be kind of at the moment, the trail access right there. That's subject to change depending on what happens with where the actual final path alignment is. But then this gives an enhanced crossing. Again, these kind of signs would be flashing, and it's right at the bottom of the dip there to make sure things are super highly visible. So as you're coming down, it would be
very visible for any vehicles to see people standing and waiting to cross here. And we have provided kind of a refuge in the existing in the proposed landscape strip there, so that pedestrians can be out of the way of any bicycles coming down the road and create kind of a safe little two-stage movement to get them across the road. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, then that would then the trail kind of jumps to the south side with some of the planned future development of the area over there. So again, a lot of the path configuration through here is subject to change, but we felt that this was a really great way for people to get across the road here. Then if you could go to the next slide. I have no idea if this is going to work. We will see. And then I don't know how jazzy we want to get, but there is some amazing music to accompany this, but we don't need to listen to it if we don't want to. Okay, that's totally fine. I don't know if it'll come through. But.
Someone can see.
But yeah, this is a visualization that we put together. That a lot of those stills that you saw came from this, and it's just a translation from existing to proposed elements along the corridor. And you can see here at Dartmouth, the protected intersection just makes the crossing so much shorter for pedestrians, especially with both of these being such high volume roadways. It just gets them on and off the vehicular travelway that much quicker. You can see how much pavement people have to cross today to get to and from the Winco area from these apartment buildings. And this would be the biggest transformation on the corridor, just with there being absolutely no ped or bike facilities with a very, very small shoulder. So this was a huge area of emphasis in our public outreach as well, that there's just not a safe way for peds and bikes to get up to 99 from the corridor. And if you do want to get jazzy at some point, this does live on the project webpage as well as we have a story map that covers a lot of the different images that we saw as well today. That I think I'm jumping ahead, but I think if you go to the next slide, I think that's what the next slide covers. And there's cool little that little graphic that's on the story map. You can slide that arrow back and forth, and it'll show existing and proposed. And then next slide. So then with next steps, so we are currently just about complete with the 10% design for the entire corridor. And now we're actively working on a 30% design, which again will cover improvements from Dartmouth to 99 and get that at a really good level to then, at the moment, kind of pause because that's the fun part, is we don't currently have funding for this project, unfortunately. But we have put together cost estimates for this north segment that we did some early cost estimating on. We applied for a build grant back in February, as well as we've applied for RFFA money through Metro. So we're going through as many, and Tiffany's been awesome at putting together all of these different applications to really kind of hopefully get some funding for this project, but it's put together again in a way that as future development comes in, we think that we can also get a lot of this built through that development. And setting up a footprint that's consistent along the corridor is just going to be so key as any and all of those pieces kind of come together at the same time. And we will also be preparing a similar cost breakdown for the south segment, just so that the whole corridor is absolutely ready and we can apply for as much funding as we can possibly get. And then we'll also be preparing kind of a design memo that documents all of the great work we've done to date, and make sure that if anybody else picks this up in the future, that they're starting off with a good foot forward. So, and then I think next slide is just questions and contact info.
Thank you. Questions? Councilor Robbins?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for this. This is super exciting. I do have a couple questions about the bus stops. Are those bus stops going to be for new bus routes or just new stops?
So there is a proposal in TriMet's Forward Together plan. They're I guess it's turning a little bit more into a long-range plan, but there is a plan for the 76 route to realign. So the current 76 route would then shift. It would go on 99 to Dartmouth, and then down Dartmouth, and then down 72nd starting on Dartmouth. So it will take an existing route and shift it. And there has been a lot of conversations around the 76 route becoming an FX service, which would be greatly appreciated again in our community where we don't have any of those frequent express services. We don't have the high capacity transit that many other communities in the Portland Metro do. So that would be a huge asset for us.
One thing.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
We've also been working with the city of Beaverton because the 76 reroute also affects Beaverton for the full route. And they're also very interested and supportive of the FX service. So we've been working with them to try to really make a good case for that. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you. My second question was about the FX service, because you said it would support it in the future. And so nothing right now, but hopefully in the future, if we can construct these stops, and I assume you would need multiple stops that match this design requirement.
Yeah, and the spacing too of FX service, they don't have stops that are spaced as closely so that it can make that a much faster trip. I mean, if you take the 76 bus tonight, which I probably will, it will take me a very long time to get home. So it's all part of the fun of it, right? But yeah, it does take a very long time just because of how many stops and how long each stop takes. And again, the Frequent Express has level boarding, so it kind of mimics in the boarding and alighting process, it mimics a train, so it can go pretty quickly.
Sorry. Just one more thing to add on the FX service. We've been working with TriMet, and right now what they're doing is like a feasibility assessment for the different routes that are being considered. And so we worked with them on, I think being able to show that we are designing to these standards and these improvements that would facilitate that type of service, really helps make that case.
Council President Wolf?
Thanks, Joelle. That was great. My question's only about funding. I was curious, and I went on the federal transportation build pages, and the way that it was written, and I could be completely wrong, is that the first round announcements on build would be the end of the month. Is that correct? That we might have a sense by end of June whether we receive it?
That's our understanding as well,
Okay.
But
who knows?
Yeah, that's our understanding. The good news is I think there are a lot of opportunity along this corridor because this, unfortunately, 76 does show up on our Safe Streets Action Plan as pretty highly ranked, which is not a great thing to be on the list for, but it does put us in a good standing to potentially use Safe Streets and Roads for All grant money in the future. Also, the fact that the transit is realigning, we could potentially look at transit dollars. So I think we have a lot of opportunity to continue to go after funding.
Well, good luck for all of us on that result, and great work, and thank you.
Councilor Hu?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. It's really exciting to see the separate lane for bikes and pedestrian, and the crosswalk, protect the crosswalk. But I'm going to say something maybe controversial at this late hour, because I read somewhere that if you need, first of all, I still see many straight roads, straight lanes, right, for cars. So, it's been argued that if there's a need for protected, like flashing beacon to properly protect pedestrian and bicyclists, it's not a successful design. So how would you respond to that? And what kind of feature is being put in there to make sure that people, drivers particularly, do keep their speed limit? Because right now we have those 20-mile-per-hour speed signs. But we can't pat ourselves in the back, right? Because the reality is that people are driving much faster than that, and that's dangerous. So I really want to know that if we are doing anything that's really fun design-wise and just not putting up a speed limit, that will really keep drivers, just by design, keep on the speed limit and not speed. So can you answer that question?
There's actually quite a few features, and I know Nick could probably expand on this too, that lowers that design speed for the roadway. And one is actually the narrowing of the roadway and bringing the curb tighter, right? Because now, and also even the landscaping, because that is the enclosure that someone will feel on the roadway. And when you have a wide open space, there's actually a Seinfeld episode that you all maybe watched at some point, but where the lane line is eliminated, and she is like, "Oh, I can go so fast, and it's so roomy," but it makes people go faster when they have a wide open space to go in. But when you start enclosing them, it makes you feel a little claustrophobic, and it makes you slow down, right? And actually lowers the design speed. So there's that, and there's also at those at every one of those crossings, there's also the curb extensions, right, which even further narrows that down. So it really creates that pinch point again, further encouraging someone to slow down. So those features are going to especially help. I think the RFBs, though, what they can do, that they are a proven safety countermeasure, and we want to make sure our people are safe, and we are putting everything in place that we can when we have the opportunity to do so. And I think it will just further add to that engagement to like further say, hey, we've got pedestrians on the corridor, and now that interaction is coming in, and it's further bringing that attention. So
I really appreciate that. And sorry if I say something controversial, because this is from experience. Just this morning when I biked to the library, I crossed a couple of flash beacon. Most people stop, but there are a couple of people who just flew past by me, and that's very dangerous. And so I'm speaking as a frustrated Tiger resident, and I'm voicing many people who have come before council and say the same thing. So I just want to make sure that when we design a new road, we really make sure that our design feature keep driver at their speed limit, and not just put a and speed sign there and we pat ourselves in the back and say it's done.
And the good news is this is a whole corridor project, and it's not a single point. Sometimes when you're dealing with a single point, it's harder to influence driver behavior because they have the rest of the corridor to set their behavior before they get to that point, right? So it's always nice to have a transition if you have a sensitive area, a transition to bring awareness to, hey, there's something here. But we have the opportunity here.
I just add one more. The other thing that is really nice when we're actually redesigning is that we can actually use a lower design speed when we do the design. And so there's so much history on this, but there was this idea that it was conservative to design to faster than what you wanted to post it at. So if you wanted to post it at 25, then you're going to design it to 30 or even 35. And so then guess what happens? People drive to the speed that it was designed for because that is what naturally feels comfortable. It's just human nature. And so now we have all these streets that were designed for higher than we really want people to be traveling. And when we're not fully rebuilding, there's things we can do, but it's more limiting. So it's really nice on a project like this where we have a lot more control with the redesign to really incorporate that into, all of the design decisions that were laid out. How steep the curves are, just all of those things are looking at this lower design speed.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Councillor Shaw?
Thank you, Mayor. And exciting, very exciting with this corridor study. Recognizing that the parking there is insufficient, I know we've heard quite a bit about that, and it's number 3 on what you've heard from the community. If you're looking at, and we don't necessarily need to go back to it, but slide 20, which is the Red Rock Creek proposed trail crossing, there is no parking there. So what is the net addition of parking given your kind of schematic here? How much parking are you adding?
That's a great question.
Yeah, we should have a number ready for you.
We're going to calculate that and share it with you because I know that we are adding a lot more parking.
Yeah.
But I don't know the exact number offhand.
No, but it's pretty significant, especially as you get north of Beveland. We pretty much have parking from Beveland to the new Atlanta Street extension. So essentially from Beveland to where the existing movie theater access is on both sides of the road for the majority of it.
And also on-street parking like that, when you don't have it separated by a bike lane, when you just have on-street parking in the travel lane like this, that actually further slows people down.
Yeah. Great, thank you. And a second question, on slide 15, it's pedestrian, bike, and then the FX, which I heard you say is express, so shorter stops, and having been a pedestrian in a situation like this where you actually had bikes going across, I've actually been hit twice in 2 other cities. So it makes me just concerned. So I don't know, perhaps there is a design element I'm not seeing in this. But if you do go to slide 15, the pedestrian is walking in the bike path with conveniently the bike person stopping, looking at hopefully a wayfinding sign. But if not, they potentially get hurt. So just from personal experience, that's a concern. And then is it best practice, and again, going to slide 20, to have the pedestrian on the inside, the bicycle line on the outside? 1, is that best practice? Then 2, to have it on both sides of the road?
Yeah, that would be best practice. So it depends on the overall kind of corridor facility that you're trying to design for. So there's a bunch of different options, and we didn't get into it much on this particular project, but we have for other city projects as well. But when it's not a shared use path scenario and they are kind of separate facilities, it is kind of the ideal design to have the bike on the inside, similar to where a bike lane would be, just kind of depending on how you want to orient it with the curb, with then kind of the pedestrians on the outside, just because that gives them kind of the furthest away from vehicle, most comfortable walking experience. When you kind of combine the facilities, and then it just kind of all kind of blends together. But rarely would you see the bike lane on the outside of the entire facility.
Great, that's really helpful because I never knew why.
Yeah.
And then also looking at the Dartmouth slide, the beautiful new one that you have, which is exciting to see, has both a pedestrian crossing and a bicycle crossing. Yes. But then if you go down to, I think it's slide 13, there's no longer a bicycle crossing. And I'm wondering if that wouldn't confuse people to when they get on the bike, when they can ride across an intersection, when they can't.
Is that Beveland? I assume?
Yes, it is Beveland.
So
correct.
that is an older simulation. We similar to Dartmouth, we have changed that design to incorporate the different modes. And it was like that previously because we did have more of a shared mixing of pedestrian bikes at the actual intersection crossing locations. And when you do that, then you can't technically have separate crossings. So it was just a singular crosswalk. But we similar to your comment, we thought it made a lot more sense to keep the modes separate since they are along the whole corridor.
Thank you. I'm just channeling Councilor who I know likes to go on dedicated crosswalks with his bike, but also to ensure that safety element. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Any additional questions? All right. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
We don't have an executive session scheduled, and we have completed our agenda, so we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Good night, Tigard.